We have some more NHL RFA signings to discuss here today, as well as another member of the 2020 NHL Draft class signing his entry-level contract. No more cases are heading to arbitration, and we'll discuss all those details coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some more RFA signings today. The remaining cases that were scheduled to go to salary arbitration and have their cases heard before an NHL arbitrator have now been settled outside of that process. So all the RFAs are now signed that had arbitration rights. So the teams that had all their arbitration cases looked after will also now get a second buyout window as well. We've already talked about some of these other teams that will have one coming up here, and there's a couple more, including the Rangers and Panthers, after some pretty important signings here today. Now, first up, we get the New York Rangers signing forward Brendan Lemieux to a 2-year contract. This one pretty much got settled right down the middle. We had seen word from Elliotte Friedman that Lemieux was looking for $2 million a year, and the Rangers were filing right around $1 million. I think it might have been just shy of $1 million, or right around there anyway, so pretty much $1 million apart, and they've come to terms on a 2-year contract. $1.55 million. So clearly that's a meet in the middle kind of scenario. Seems to be a pretty fair contract. Lemieux still relatively young, still kind of working on developing here. Lemieux seems to fit in quite well with the Rangers after being acquired from the Winnipeg Jets previously. So good signing overall. I think it's still an opportunity where he can continue to grow and develop. And obviously I think he can be a pretty solid bottom six guy for a while here at the NHL level. He'll still be a restricted free agent when his contract is ready to expire. So he's still a controllable asset as well. So pretty good amount of money, still an RFA. Overall, I like this contract, and I think the Rangers have done a good job. They've had a pretty decent offseason here, getting all their guys looked after. The other thing I learned today as well, I knew it was a long stretch, but didn't realize how long, is it's been a long time since the Rangers have actually had a case reach the point where it was going to go to arbitration and actually go through the process all the way and be completed by an arbitrator. I believe it's like 17 years or something. It's a really long stretch that I saw on Twitter that the Rangers have here. So obviously that's good on them. You don't want cases going to arbitration if you can help it. It's essentially like a court case where one case is being described by the player trying to get more money, the team's trying to save money. Some things are going to be said about the player by the team that could be hurtful. At the end of the day, it's a business. They're going to say what they can. You're going to hear all about your flaws. Well, meanwhile, you're going to talk about your strengths and what you bring. And it quite often damages the relationship. And in most cases, as I've researched before, a lot of players don't stay with the team all that long after that. I mean, it happens occasionally where it does work out, but a high percentage of them do not stay with that team long term. It just doesn't work out. The relationship becomes kind of damaged. So good on them to make an effort here to go all that time without having one reach that point. The other big RFA signing today that had arbitration rights as well was Mackenzie Weegar in the Florida Panthers coming to terms on a 3-year contract extension. We had previously heard comments from Weegar's agent indicating disappointment on how negotiations had gone at that point in time, as well as all the trade rumors around the player. Clearly, he's a guy who wants to stay in Florida, seems to like the team, wants to stay, get something done, and the Panthers were really focused on trading him and not going well with negotiations. Now, this is a type of contract that averages out at $3.25 million per season, but it is a escalated contract, like a backloaded deal, like we've seen here in many other contracts signed this offseason. Obviously, it helps the team with cash flow for the first little while and builds it up here over time. Also helps the player with the amount of escrow they get to pay in, so it's really good for both sides in that sense. But Weegar's contract here goes $2 million up to $3 million and then up to $4.75. So there's been a lot of trade rumors around this player, and just because he's signed, I would not suggest that he's not going anywhere. At the same time, I can't say for sure that he will be by any means. He very well could stick around and play in Florida and play out his contract, but with the amount of teams that were interested in acquiring him, I think things had gotten quiet, but now they know the contract price that's coming with them, and might very well intrigue teams to kind of make another phone call here and kind of rejuvenate talks. We know that the Winnipeg Jets were interested. We know the Calgary Flames were interested, as well as others. Even Boston has been rumored to be looking at the defense market, trying to consider bringing another guy. Obviously, they lost Krug. They might lose Chara. They have Kevin Miller, who's likely coming back, but he's missed so much time and battled so many injuries that he really isn't the most reliable back there. They could use some more depth on their blue line, and obviously a guy like Weegar could fit well with how they play. So teams like that are certainly making inquiries. The Leafs were really close to making a Weegar acquisition. A lot of talks went on earlier into the offseason, but The Leafs were just not willing to give up what the Panthers were looking for. That was why it never happened. I don't know exactly what the asking price was, but all we know from NHL insiders is that talks happened, and the Leafs were just not willing to pay the price that the Panthers were asking. Now that the contract's in place, that could change. I don't see Toronto being in the running. They've made other moves. They're pretty well looked after in that regard. But other teams, like I mentioned, like the Bostons, the Winnipegs, the Calgarys, and others too, they're not the only ones out there. I can see talks resuming and still could possibly see a scenario where a trade unfolds. So we'll see what happens, but Weegar could very well find himself on the move, but at least he knows his contract's in place, which is the main thing here for this offseason. Another RFA signing as well that took place, which was after yesterday's video went out, was the Columbus Blue Jackets coming to terms with RFA defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov. Now, he also gets a 3-year contract, and again, like Weegar, it's a backloaded deal and escalating year after year salary where it rises each season. Gavrikov certainly proved to be a pretty valuable defenseman for them last year, got into a fair bit of games and played a fair bit, kind of proved himself. And obviously he's a player who's going to probably be able to take on a bigger role. We saw them move out Ryan Murray as well this year. So there's an opportunity for Gavrikov to kind of move up on the defense depth chart. I know he seems to be a guy who can continue to grow. And I think this contract is really going to be indicative of what they feel he can become, more so than what he is today. At least that's how I feel about it. I think it's a pretty good contract, but it's something that you want to continue to see growth out of him to kind of earn this contract here over the next few years. His average annual value for cap purposes will be $2.8 million. The contract goes from 1.65 up to 2.5 in year 2 and then up to 4.2 in year 3. So obviously by year 3 he'll be making $4 million per year. Obviously the cap hit will be lower, but still, like, they obviously anticipate he's going to continue to grow and develop and become a stronger, more important piece in their back end. In a couple of years' time as well, they're also going to have some free agents like Werenski and Jones are going to need new deals, and they're going to be looking for big money. So the Jackets could have a pretty expensive blue line at that point, depending on how things go with Gavrikov as well. So we'll see, but pretty good signing here, at least for the time being. Now, the other contract we saw today as well was the Anaheim Ducks signing their first-round selection, Jacob Perreault, who was drafted 27th overall from the OHL Sarnia Sting. The right-shot center iceman was a pretty good goal scorer. Obviously, his father was a long-time NHL player as well. Played for quite a long time with the Leafs. Perreault is a pretty solid hockey player. Likely going to play in junior again. I don't see him going straight to the NHL. The Ducks are pretty well positioned with a lot of good prospects as well. So he's going to have a lot of competition when he does make the jump to the pro ranks. Obviously, guys like Sam Steele are still relatively young, as well as Trevor Zegras is going to be making his debut here as well soon. And you get some other guys as well in that forward group that he's going to be competing with. He's going to have a lot of tough competition, but give himself another year, possibly 2, of playing junior, make the jump. He's probably 2 to 3 years away, in my opinion, from really making an NHL regular shift. But we'll see what happens. A great prospect for the Ducks to pick up late in the first round. It's a pretty deep draft. So that is all your news for today. Let me know your thoughts on all these signings here down below, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.